She was able to get a brand new Sharon, full size, and she brought it up to me, and as soon as I took it from her, I bolted out of the kitchen and through the backyard, and I launched into this massive, it must have got at least 80 metres, torpedo punt, and it went spiral through the air, and it landed right on the edge of the corrugated roof of the chook pens, and it died.
And I said, "Oh, Dad, look, there's this show on TV, you know, they've made up this game, but it looks a bit like Gaelic football." And Dad said, "Oh no, that's a real game," and apparently that's what they play. So that was the first time I'd seen anything. And I only remember this guy taking a mark, as we'd call it, just catching the ball, and everyone started cheering. And I was thinking, well, you know, why cheer? He's only caught the ball like an our game, you have to actually do something with it.
It's as exciting a thing as it ever happened in our lives. You know, I don't think too many of the country boys have been to the city too often, let alone to a game of footy. And the MCG was this huge building that we'd all seen on television. And the wander in there was unbelievable, the dark, grey concrete underbelly of the ground, and you just wander around and you get soaked up in the atmosphere. I remember it being pretty cold.
The only time I was ever approached, I played against Geelong College for Melbourne Grammar down at Geelong College in 1939, and after the match, Reg Hickey came up to me and he asked me if I'd be interested in coming and play with Geelong. I didn't know what he was talking about.
And played a good basketball game as well, and Dad said, "Well, you're at the age now where you've got to decide what do you want to do." And I remember that, driving home in the car, and then my gut feeling was football.
Friday night after footy training, if we weren't playing, I'd get in the car and I'd drive 8 hours to Canberra during the night, and so I could have 1 or 2 days there with my friends and family, and get back in the car on the Sunday morning and drive all the way back again. That's how homesick I was when I first got there, and that went on probably through every chance I got. I did that.
I arrived there for pre-season, the start of pre-season, and you know, there'd been talk about it, and me being on the money and all that sort of stuff. And anyway, we were sitting in the change rooms, and Ronnie came in, who's our property steward, and said, "Right, boys, you have to pay $40 to play for footies." Yeah, no worries. And then Garry stood up and said, "Boys, if you're struggling, ask Whitey, he'll pay for it." So that was a good welcome to the club.
Yeah, this guy's training. I met an odd one over the pre-season, and someone would say, "Oh, that's so-and-so driving down the road there, guy." Yeah, fair enough, you know, who's he going in? It was Mark Lee when we were in Ireland and Dublin. And I went, you know, I was pressing the button because I was going up to meet Robbie Flair and Jared Healy. And the lift opened and I was about to go in, and then this monster, I thought the monster, just walked out of the lift, and I just went, you know. And he looked real mean, and he was a big puss on him, and I just went, "My God, who's that?" And then I noticed he had a tracksuit on. I thought, "Gee, that must be one of the players." And then I suddenly clicked, "My God, I'm going to be playing against these guys." And I really got scared. I thought I couldn't play against a guy that big, and he'd kill me.
And their old man had naturally, I'll have a word with the coach, and with a few adjectives, Norm would always tell them that your son can be all right, you can look after him all his life, except when he's down here playing football. I'm his father when he's playing football, out.
Gracious in defeat, and I always try to be that. I mean, I think the humble in victory's the easier one. Gracious in defeat, just to shut up.
I mean, obviously it is hard for a coach to try to take, 40 players under his wing or whatever, but yeah, I guess you sometimes feel it would have been nice to have just been sort of pulled aside and had, told that you were sort of worthy of something.
Possibly the most disappointing thing at the time was the lack of communication from coaches.
You know, it's better that he said something than not say anything at all. I think that's the worst way to berate a player, when you just know there's something wrong but they won't say anything.
Yeah, I was a fiery coach and confrontational, and I think after a while my style would be very wearing. That's why I used to move from club to club.
And I never made the mistake again of being first into the huddle, by the way, but I was first in the huddle and he screamed at me from about 30 metres that I was still a schoolboy playing schoolboy football, and that I should take my school football jumper off and get in the real world. I've always wanted to tell Ron Barassi to get stuffed, but I haven't been able to do that.
I remember my first pre-season after weights. I was driving home after our first weight session, and I started to get a bit crooked driving down St Kilda Road. I was trying to hold on. I was driving, threw up all over my steering wheel whilst driving. I had to pull over into the town and have a little bit of a chuck under a tree. all the businessmen and that, they were looking and had a bit of a laugh. So.
My first pre-season down there, and I was a tubby little kid from Canberra, and they asked me to run 15 kilometres straight up Mount Buller, and I think I ran second last, and I think I beat Earl Spalding.
The existing players, you know, obviously don't like young guns turning up and trying to take their spot.
Blew up after the 1995 footy trip, came back at 114 kilos, 14 kilos overweight, so got known as the Ox, and it's stuck since.
Fans and whatever don't fully appreciate the kind of pain they're in, you know. I mean, they're taking Panadines before they play, and they've got to ice up after the game for 2 hours, injections, you know, all sorts of pain-killing injections, anti-inflammatories, you know, all of that sort of stuff.
I only thought about that probably when I said, oh, this is too hard. The last 3 weeks of my career was the only time I thought, well, I'm ready to chuck this in because I can't play it. Because I always got to the stage where if you compromise the way you play, you don't play, I reckon. Like, you know, if you reckon you can play with your broken hand or your crook shoulder or whatever and stick a needle in it, but you're not going to compromise the way you play all the time, go and do it. But at the end of the day, for me, the decision to retire ultimately was taken out of my hands because I exhausted everything I could in terms of trying to get this back thing right, and you know, I ended up having surgery and travelled around the country and had that many needles stuck in me, and I couldn't. But I needed to do that because if I hadn't have done that and then retired, and then we're sitting here now, I'd say, so I retired in '87, but I didn't have the back surgery, and if I'd had that, I might have played another 3 years. I reckon that would have been hard to live with.
So I thought, well, why not give it a go now? So he was absolutely unconscious. I pushed his nose and got it as straight as I thought it should be, and it stuck there because of the sort of stickiness of the bones and all the blood around. And then we held it there with some tape and all. And his nose is perfectly straight. He's never had an operation. He has no nasal obstruction. So I saved the club a surgical operation and indeed a fee.
Michael Pickering, who ended up playing with our side, used to call it a winning ache. And the winning ache is one of the best feelings you can have in footy. And a lot of the time, sitting in the shower after the game was probably the only time you got a chance to burn your own and reflect without, you know, hangers on jumping on you or whatever. And you've had a win, you've got scratches, and you can hardly move your arm or whatever, and you're limping, and you just the water foot, and you say, this is why I play, you know, because you paid the price. You've got a few. You're not going to stop you playing next week, and you almost wear them proudly, you know. I used to but in lots of ways look forward to waking up on a Sunday after you've had a good win, hopefully played well, and just finding out exactly, you know, where you are sore.
Went harder on the drink back then than they do now. I went to have a drink with the Melbourne boys after they played up here one day. And I said, come on, let's go and have a drink, guys. And they told me they had a pool session and a stretching session and dinner and all that to do. It was never a done thing when I was down in Melbourne.
I had to learn to be a lot harder and a lot more outgoing as a footballer. I mean, you know, with junior footy you can run around and take big hangers and kick goals from everywhere and everyone thinks you're a champion, just like that. But once you play amongst, you know, 18 or 19 or 40 other blokes who are in the same situation, you can't just be, you know, a talented junior footballer. You've got to be, you know, harder and stronger and more aggressive, because if you're not those things, you just never get hold of the ball.
I was living with the coach. This is a really good way of getting a game. You live with the coach.
Coach eventually brought me in after the 6th one and said, look, or the 5th one, he said, look, if we don't win this week, it means we're not going to make the finals. So I'm going to play the young guys. So I'll give you a go if you play well. So it was sort of like I knew, and so we were out watching St Kilda play Melbourne at AFL Park. And I hate to say it, but I had a bit of a soft spot for St Kilda. I was sort of barracking for them because I figured if we lose, I was going to be playing. And you know, unfortunately, when you're young, you look after yourself. And Tony Lockett kicked 8 goals and Danny Hughes, and I think I had a beer every time he kicked a goal. It was a bit sad because there was a bunch of us. But I suppose when you're young, all you want to do is play.
I clearly remember sitting in the MCG grandstands watching the seniors play, and if someone got injured or wasn't having a terrific game in a position that you thought you might be able to get, it was quite refreshing sitting back there thinking you might be a chance the following week to get a game. No doubt most of the guys playing in the twos would be sitting there thinking exactly the same thing.
I wasn't hoping he was going to get dropped or get injured or whatever. I was just hoping that he wasn't going to play too well and I was going to get in.
Good afternoon, sir. I'm very sorry, but I've been told to stand in front of you. I stood in front of him.
And when we got to the centre, Kennedy looked at me and he said, "So you think you're a expletive ruckman?" So the ball was bounced and I ended up with a knee in my throat and I'm on the back, and I thought, well, this is great.
And I played on Billy Picken, and Billy was a character on and off the field. And the first time I played centre forward, and the first time I lined up on Billy, Billy said, "You go near the ball and I'll make sure you don't get a second touch." And as the game evolved, he'd call the game. So he'd be saying, "Watch out, Stick, here comes Billy!" And Billy takes another great mark. And this is the way he'd call the game.
Running out was it was great for me. It was just a huge buzz because I'm just used to cars being on the hill, getting honked at, just your local mates sort of, coming along to watch. But having 77,000 people watch you play footy in the atmosphere, and I can also remember running out of the banner. I actually tripped ass up.
In my first year, I was Rookie of the Year, and from then on, everyone expected I'd just keep going up and up and playing well. And sometimes, this is my third year now, so guys are starting to get on to me, and they're starting to put me on better players. Like played on Ronnie Burns up at Geelong, and I've played on Jeffrey Farmer, and then I played on Nick Daffy on the weekend, and they all beat me. I got told on Wednesday that I wouldn't be playing. I'd be going back to East Fremantle. I just thought, maybe a fresh start and I'll come down here and have a good game, but it just didn't work out that way. There's so many people looking on you and so many people expect you to do well. If you're not doing too well, then people are looking for reasons why, and sometimes it just doesn't work out. You never go out there to play a bad game. You always go out there to play well, but sometimes it just doesn't go your way.
But it was devastating when things didn't go your way. You didn't really know how to handle bad form, and you'd inevitably get dropped because star players would be coming back, and there'd be, you're usually inconsistent as a young player, so a couple of bad games and they give you the flick, and it's hard to get through that because you're not really equipped to deal with it. But what you learn pretty quick, though, is it's a tough game. It's a really hard game, and there's no room to really get emotional about it. You just have to do the best you can do.
I think the frustrations of playing 4 years in the seconds for so long, I think probably started to come out in the way I played footy.
You could never assume that you had the spot secure every week. There's always good players coming from underneath, and with the way that Barassi used to coach us, you never ever got comfortable with your position. So there was always that pressure to go out there and play well every week.
You really have to muster up your own enthusiasm after that. You sort of, once the coaching staff aren't sort of acknowledging your existence or whatever, it sort of comes back to you a bit.
At the moment, I'm just battling a little bit with form, and vice captain of the footy club and the high expectations, and I'm just really battling just to find great form, and I'm putting pressure upon myself, and then I have to be selfless towards the younger guys coming through and try to be positive when I'm a little bit flattered.
No, the propaganda that was being circulated was that they're going to cut clubs off regardless, and if you wanted to survive in any particular way, this was. So I'm not saying it was misinformation, but there's so much stuff around that as a player, it was too much for us to try and get our head around. I mean, we had other things to do. That's why, at the end of the day, you've got to let people run the club.
The media over here is very strange. I reckon we get a lot of guys that have never played football and probably couldn't draw you football, but they're there writing in the papers and telling people what they should and shouldn't be doing.
It's not a nice thing to have your failure, no matter what it is, all over the paper. There's no doubt about that, but you can't get away from it. So I just put my head down and tail up and sail out into it. But it wasn't an easy thing to do.
I didn't realise how rapidly they turn on you, which is really quite amazing. And so they do get stuck in, and they don't really care too much how you feel about it. So it's an intensely personal thing. When someone is bagging you as a player, they're bagging you as a person, and well, that's how a player perceives it.
And being such a small town, or compared to Melbourne in Perth, there's a lot more media scrutiny on you. There's a lot more. One newspaper's got to write about us or the Eagles, so. You're always in the headline every second day.
I remember going home from training, walking out, and you'd always get followed out by a reporter because they think they could get the young bloke to cough up some information that the older blokes wouldn't. So.
In the early years, Alf Brown used to be a great critic of mine. He used to say Melbourne's got no weakness except on one wing.
At the moment, I'm finding the pressures of coming up week after week when your body's under the pump from the week before, and really just trying to recover and keep up with young guys. The game's getting quicker, and when I missed from 90, I missed 95, 96 and most of 97 with knees, and from my last game in 94 to my first game in 97, the game had changed tenfold. It had just gone so much quicker, and it felt as though I was left behind, so I had to readjust and rediscover my speed, my fitness, and that took a lot of getting used to, and a lot of pressure was placed upon me because I wasn't sure if I could make it.
Supporters would say, oh, you're not as good as your old man, or you're not as tough as your old man, or you're better than your old man. And if Dad's watching this, there wasn't too many of those, Dad.
I didn't really hear the siren, and going back to take my kick, I didn't really see Jimmy Stynes run through the mark. But obviously these things had transpired because I was about to let loose with a big spiral to get the ball forward.
I suppose just the humiliation at that very moment when you go, oh my God, I've just done something and there's no way out of this. You know, it's like I am in deep shit.
I can remember Greeny coming up to me, put his hand around me and leant his head on my shoulder and said, for God's sake, Bucky, the siren's gone, kick the goal.
You know, and what am I going to do? And you're trying to find a solution and you can't because there isn't any. Like and everyone has seen it, or they're going to see it.
But I was more nervous half an hour after the game, you know, like when it all sunk in and the euphoria died down, like, you know, when you have a bit of time to sit down and reflect yourself. I can remember shaking, you know, starting shaking, you know, and thinking, geez, what if I had missed? How would I have felt?
Because at first, because guilt goes, you go through this whole guilt trip, and at first you go, well, no one saw it, because no one really knew what the hell the 15-minute penalty was for. Your teammates anyway, because that's what we sort of thinking of at the time. But then suddenly the reality hits, my God, you know, everyone's going to find out about this, and I'm going to have to live with this forever.
Because somebody plays football, everybody thinks he's JC on wheels. And I have been credited with abilities and stature that I don't possess, just because I once played football with a modicum of luck and a modicum of success.
And do any little...
Like, obviously words that had H in them, you know, like, you know, it's the third quarter and 33 and all, you know, there was...
You really struggle, I think, with your own identity. The question is, who am I if I'm not a football star? There's a bit of an identity issue that you have to come to terms with and realise that you are just an ordinary bloke who happen to be, you know, a gifted football player, and that takes a little bit of adjustment for a lot of players, I know, and for me as well.
I mean, I rang up a friend today and he said, you're just thinking about football, hey? And it's just basically true. That's all I think about.
And to me, that's the ultimate in battle, you know. Can you withstand all this physical and mental pressure, and can you overcome, you know, the body and take yourself to another level?
It's the greatest game in the world, and you wouldn't pass up an opportunity to be involved at any cost.
You had to learn to be responsible for yourself and all the actions that you took, and you had to learn that you were involved in a team, so you were responsible to the boot stutter and to the selectors and to the supporters and to all your teammates.
My attitude to the contest was, mate, you do your best, I'll do mine, and if you win, good on you. Because that's what sport's about.
News of the death of Ron Barassi Sr. in Tobruk, and Ron Barassi was a great mate of ours, Norm's and mine, and Bay Smithy and I were standing there with tears rolling down our cheeks. Then we got to bounce the ball and you got to play in the grand final.